In the quiet glow of a Chicago kitchen, Emily Carter stared at a bank balance that screamed betrayal. $3,287 left of the $487,000 she'd built with her husband over 27 years. Why had Jim Thompson, the man she'd loved since college, drained their life savings and vanished with a woman half her age? A single photo on Instagram of Jim laughing on a Bora Bora beach with Ashley Brooks shattered her world. But the real mystery was the anonymous text that followed. "Stop digging or your daughter pays. Could a mother's love survive the secrets threatening to tear her family apart?" Subscribe now and join us on this emotional roller coaster. Help us hit 1,000 subscribers first. In the quiet glow of a Chicago kitchen, Emily Carter stared at a bank balance that screamed betrayal. $3,287 left of the $487,000 she'd built with her husband over 27 years. Why had Jim Thompson, the man she'd loved since college, drained their life savings and vanished with a woman half her age? A single photo on Instagram of Jim laughing on a Bora Bora beach with Ashley Brooks shattered her world, but the real mystery was the anonymous text that followed. "Stop digging or your daughter pays. Could a mother's love survive the secrets threatening to tear her family apart?" Subscribe now and join us on this emotional roller coaster. Help us hit 1,000 subscribers first. The clock on the microwave blinked 7:32 p.m., casting a faint green hue over the granite countertop where Emily sat, frozen. Her laptop screen glared back at her, the online banking portal open like a wound she couldn't stop prodding. She'd logged in that afternoon on a whim. Jim had been cagey about money lately, brushing off her questions with a curt, "It's under control." But this was a gut punch. Nearly $500,000, their retirement nest egg, gone. She scrolled through the transactions again, her breath catching at a wire transfer dated 2 weeks ago. $483,000 to an account she didn't recognize, under the name A. Brooks. "Jim?" She called out earlier that evening, her voice trembling as she held up the laptop. He'd been in the living room scrolling through his phone, his salt and pepper hair catching the lamplight. He glanced up, irritation flickering in his hazel eyes. "What now, Emily?" "What's this?" She turned the screen toward him, her finger jabbing at the damning numbers. "Our savings! It's practically empty. Where did it go?" Jim's reaction was instant, volcanic. He slammed his phone down on the coffee table so hard she flinched, expecting the glass to crack. "Are you spying on me now?" he roared, his face flushing a deep crimson she'd rarely seen in their 27 years together. "You're paranoid, Emily. Controlling. This is why our marriage is suffocating." "Suffocating?" she shot back, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Jim, $487,000 doesn't just disappear. I have a right to know." He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that stung like a slap. "A right? You haven't worked in 20 years. That money's from my career, my sacrifices." The words cut deep, slicing through the life they'd built together. Emily had given up her paralegal career to raise their 3 kids, Sophia, Ethan, and Ava, while Jim climbed the ladder at Midwest Financial. It had been their plan, their sacrifice, or so she thought. "If you can't trust me," Jim said, his voice dropping to a cold, deliberate edge, "maybe we shouldn't be married anymore. Maybe divorce is what we need." The air left her lungs. Divorce? After 27 years, he'd toss it all away rather than explain? Before she could respond, he stormed upstairs, drawers slamming, closet doors banging. He reappeared with a suitcase, his jaw set. "I need space from your accusations. I'll be back when you've calmed down and when you're ready to apologize." "Apologize?" she whispered, but he was already at the door. "Don't contact me," he snapped. "I'll call when I'm ready." The door slammed shut, leaving the house in a silence so thick it pressed against her chest. Emily sank into a kitchen chair, her hands trembling as she stared at the laptop. She was 52, a suburban mom with a life she'd thought was stable, secure, predictable. Now it had imploded in 20 minutes. Her kids were grown, Sophia in medical school in Oregon, Ethan finishing his engineering degree in Colorado, Ava in her second year at the University of Illinois, and Jim, had just walked out, threatening divorce over a question she had every right to ask. She refreshed the banking page, praying she'd misread the numbers. No change. $3,287. A sick feeling twisted her stomach as she scrolled back further. Small withdrawals had trickled out over months. $500 here, $1,000 there. Nothing glaring until the massive wire transfer 2 weeks ago, when she'd been visiting Sophia, who was A. Brooks. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed the name into Google. Nothing useful. Just a few LinkedIn profiles and a realtor in Florida. She switched to Instagram, her heart pounding as she typed, Ashley Brooks. The profile loaded, and there he was. Jim, tanned and grinning on a white sand beach, his arm around a blonde woman who couldn't be older than 35. Her hair cascaded over bronzed shoulders, a diamond tennis bracelet glinting in the sun. The caption read, Paradise with my love. Sorry, not sorry, Emily. He's mine now. Upgraded life, rich man benefits. Location tag, Bora Bora. Emily's vision blurred with tears. She clicked through more posts. Jim and Ashley shopping in designer stores, dining at candlelit tables, lounging on a yacht. A direct message popped up from Ashley. Thanks for funding our new life, sweetie, with a photo of their bank statement. Jim's signature scrawled across it. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of the spiral. An unknown number. She opened the text. Stop digging or your daughter pays. Attached was a grainy photo of Ava walking across campus, her backpack slung over one shoulder, oblivious to the camera. Emily's blood ran cold. She dialed Ava's number, her fingers fumbling. Mom? Ava answered, her voice bright. What's up? Just checking in, Emily managed, forcing a smile into her tone. You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Heading to class. Love you. Ava hung up, leaving Emily clutching the phone, her mind racing. Who sent this? Jim? Ashley? Someone else? The photo was time-stamped that morning, hours before their fight. This wasn't just betrayal, it was something darker, something dangerous. She stumbled to the sink, splashing cold water on her face, the droplets mixing with tears she hadn't realized were falling. Her reflection stared back. Dark circles under her eyes, lines etched deeper by shock. 27 years with Jim flashed through her mind, their college days at Northwestern, his proposal under a snowy oak tree, the births of their kids, the late nights she'd stayed up waiting while he worked. Had it all been a lie? And now, with their savings gone and a threat hanging over Ava, what was she supposed to do? Emily straightened, wiping her face with a dish towel. She wasn't the naive housewife Jim thought she was. She'd been a paralegal once. Smart, resourceful. If he thought she'd crumble, he was wrong. But that text, it gnawed at her. Was Ava really in danger? Should she call the police and risk escalating things? Or dig deeper herself and face whatever Jim had dragged them into? The laptop pinged with a new email notification. She hesitated, then clicked. It was from Jim's work account, sent an hour ago. Don't do anything stupid, Em. Trust me one last time. Her stomach dropped. Trust him? After this? She hovered over the reply button, torn between fury and fear, as the kitchen clock ticked toward an uncertain tomorrow. Emily Carter barely slept that night, the glow of her laptop screen burning into her eyes as she stared at Jim's cryptic email. Don't do anything stupid, Em. Trust me one last time. Trust him? After he drained their $487,000 savings and disappeared with Ashley Brooks? After that chilling text threatening Ava? The words mocked her, looping through her mind as the first light of dawn crept through the blinds of their Lake Forest home. She clutched a cold mug of coffee, the bitterness matching the ache in her chest. She needed answers. Now. By 8 a.m., Emily was on the phone with Jake Sullivan, a private investigator she'd found through an old paralegal contact. His voice was gruff, seasoned. "Give me 24 hours, Mrs. Carter. I'll dig into this Ashley Brooks and that wire transfer. But if this is as bad as it looks, you might need more than me. You might need cops." She hesitated, the image of Ava walking across campus flashing in her mind. "Just find out who she is first," she said, her voice tight. "I need to know what I'm dealing with." While waiting for Jake, Emily turned the house upside down, searching for clues. Jim's office was locked, but she found a spare key taped under his desk drawer, a trick he'd used since college. Inside, papers were strewn across the oak desk. Tax returns, credit card statements, a hotel receipt from Minneapolis dated last month when he'd claimed a business trip. She froze at the scent of cologne on a wrinkled shirt in the corner. Not his usual woodsy scent, but something floral, cloying. Ashley's? Her hands shook as she rifled through a filing cabinet, pulling out bank statements. Then, tucked in an old tax folder from 15 years ago, she found it. A handwritten letter, yellowed at the edges. "Jim," it began in a looping scrawl, "you chose your family over me, but I'll never forgive you. Our daughter isn't a secret you can bury forever. Lily." Emily's breath hitched. Lily? 15 years ago, right around Ava's birth, she sank into Jim's leather chair, the letter trembling in her hands. Ava. Her baby girl with Jim's hazel eyes and her stubborn streak. Could she be someone else's? The dates lined up too perfectly. Her mind raced back to that pregnancy. Jim's late nights, his sudden trips, her own exhaustion with 2 toddlers already. Had she missed the signs even then? She needed to talk to someone. Sophia, her eldest, was the practical one, the medical student who'd always grounded her. Emily dialed, her voice breaking as she spilled everything: the money, Ashley, the threatening text, and now this letter from Lily and Lily Hayes. Sophia listened in silence, then said, "Mom, we can settle this. I'll order a DNA test, discreetly. I've got access through the hospital. We'll know for sure." Emily's stomach churned. "I don't know, Soph. What if it's true? What if Ava—" "Then we deal with it," Sophia cut in, her tone firm but gentle. "But you deserve the truth. We all do." Emily nodded, forgetting Sophia couldn't see her, tears slipping down her cheeks. She'd raised Ava, changed her diapers, sung her lullabies, cheered at her soccer games. Biology didn't change that, did it? The call was still on speaker when Ethan's voice burst through from Colorado. He'd been on a group call, silent until now. "Are you serious, Mom? You're digging up some old letter and turning Ava into a science experiment? She's my sister, our sister. You're tearing us apart over Dad's mess." His anger hit her like a freight train. "Ethan, I'm not trying to—" "You're obsessed," he shouted. "Dad's the one who screwed up, not Ava." He hung up, leaving a deafening silence. Sophia sighed. "He'll cool off, Mom, but maybe don't tell Ava yet." Too late. Emily's phone buzzed with a text from Ava. "Ethan told me, 'How could you think I'm not yours? I hate you.'" The words stabbed deeper than Jim's betrayal, and Emily buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Her family, the one thing she'd fought to protect, was fracturing before her eyes. Jake called back that afternoon, his tone grim. "Ashley Brooks isn't just some fling, Emily. She's tied to a crew out of Chicago. Loan sharks, real nasty types. Word is Jim borrowed big to cover losses at Midwest Financial, then funneled your savings to her to pay it off. But here's the kicker. She's keeping the cash, and they're pissed. That text could be from them or her. Either way, you're in their crosshairs." Emily's heart pounded. "Ava, they mentioned Ava." "Then you've got a choice," Jake said. "Go to the cops or let me tail Ashley. I can find out where she's holed up." Emily's mind spun. Police meant exposing Jim, maybe losing him to jail, or worse. But waiting meant risking Ava. Follow her, she decided. I need proof. That evening, alone in the house, Emily sat at the dining table, Lily's letter beside the threatening text on her phone. She traced Ava's face in the campus photo, whispering, "You're mine no matter what." But doubt gnawed at her. Had Jim loved Lily? Was Ava a living reminder of his infidelity? And now, with loan sharks in the mix, was this about more than money? Her phone chimed again. Ashley this time. No anonymous mask. Want the truth? Ask Jim about Lily. Meet me at the diner on 5th, 8 p.m. tomorrow. Come alone. Emily stared at the message, the diner's neon sign flashing in her memory from years of family breakfasts. Was this a trap? Ashley's taunting Instagram posts? Jim sipping champagne, her flaunting that diamond bracelet? Burned in her mind. But Lily? That name tied it all together. She thought of Ava's tearful text, Ethan's rage, Sophia's calm resolve. Her kids were slipping away, and Jim had already abandoned her. She couldn't sit still any longer. She grabbed her coat, the weight of Jim's old spare key in her pocket grounding her. 27 years of trust had crumbled in days, replaced by secrets older than her youngest child, and a threat she couldn't ignore. Tomorrow, she'd face Ashley, but tonight, she'd call Sophia back. DNA test or not, she needed her daughter's strength. As the wind howled outside, rattling the windows, Emily whispered to the empty house, "I won't let them break us." But deep down, she wondered, had they already? Emily Carter stood in front of the bathroom mirror, splashing cold water on her face to steady her nerves. It was 7 p.m., an hour before her meeting with Ashley Brooks at the diner on 5th Street. The crumpled letter from Lily and Lily, Hayes, sat on the counter beside Ava's campus photo, both staring back at her like ghosts she couldn't shake. She'd spent the day replaying Ashley's text. Want the truth? Ask Jim about Lily. Meet me at the diner on 5th, 8 p.m. tomorrow. Come alone. And Jake Sullivan's warning about loan sharks echoed in her ears. This wasn't just about money or betrayal anymore. It was about survival. She called Catherine Kate Evans, her old friend turned divorce lawyer, that afternoon. Jim's taken everything, Kate, $487,000, gone. And now there's this Ashley Brooks and threats about Ava. I need to fight back. Kate's voice was calm, professional. Bring me everything, bank statements, that text, the Instagram posts. We'll file for divorce and freeze his accounts. But Emily, if this is tied to criminals, you need the police. Emily hesitated. Not yet. I'm meeting her tonight. I need answers first. Kate sighed. Be careful. Record it if you can. I'll have my team ready. Emily slipped a small digital recorder into her purse, then pulled her father's old .38 revolver from a locked box in the closet. She hadn't touched it since his death a decade ago, but its cold weight steadied her trembling hands. She wasn't a fighter, not anymore, but 27 years as a wife and mother had taught her one thing: protect what's yours. She thought of Ava's tearful, "I hate you," Ethan's anger, Sophia's quiet strength. Whatever Ashley knew, Emily would get it out of her. The diner was a relic: faded red booths, chipped Formica tables, the hum of a jukebox playing Sinatra. Ashley sat in the back, her blonde hair spilling over a leather jacket, that damn diamond bracelet glinting under the fluorescent lights. She smirked as Emily slid into the booth. "Didn't think you'd show, Mrs. Carter." "Guess you're braver than Jim said." Emily's jaw tightened. "Where's my money, Ashley? And what do you know about Lily?" Ashley leaned back, sipping a Coke like they were old friends. "Your money's funding my new life. Thanks for that. As for Lily, ask Jim. She was his first big mistake, 15 years ago, right around when your precious Ava came along. He's got a type, doesn't he? Women he can ruin." Emily's chest burned, but she kept her voice steady. "Give me back what's mine, or I go to the police." Ashley laughed, sharp and cold. "Police won't help you. Jim's in deeper than you think. He borrowed from some bad people to cover his losses, hundreds of thousands. I was just the collector. Want it back? Come to the warehouse on East 12th tonight, 11 p.m. But don't cry when you see what's waiting." She slid out of the booth, tossing a 20 on the table. "Oh, and Emily, Jim says you'll take him back." Pathetic. Emily's hands clenched into fists as Ashley sauntered out, the diner door jangling shut. She hit record on the device, catching every word, but her mind raced. Warehouse? Bad people? She called Jake. She's pointing me to East 12th, 11 p.m., said Jim's in trouble. Jake's voice hardened. That's a loan shark hangout. Don't go, Emily. I'll handle it. But she couldn't wait. I'm going. Back me up if you can. At 10:45 p.m., Emily parked her minivan a block from the warehouse, its rusted walls looming under a flickering streetlight. The gun felt heavy in her coat pocket, the recorder humming softly against her chest. She crept closer, the air thick with gasoline and damp concrete. Voices spilled from a cracked window, harsh, angry. She peered inside and froze. Jim was there, tied to a chair, his face bruised and bloodied, a gag in his mouth. Two hulking men towered over him, one cracking his knuckles, the other holding a knife. Ashley stood nearby, arms crossed, her voice icy. Where's the rest of the money, Jim? They'll kill you if you don't talk. Emily's stomach lurched. Jim, her Jim, looked broken, his eyes wide with terror. She hated him, hated his lies, his betrayal with Ashley, maybe with Lily too. But 27 years flooded back, his laugh at Sophia's birth, the way he'd carried Ethan on his shoulders, the quiet nights they'd dreamed of retirement. She couldn't watch him die. Before she could think, she burst through the door, shouting, "Stop! I pay! Let him go!" The men spun toward her, the knife glinting. Ashing's eyes narrowed, then widened in mock surprise. Well, look who's playing hero. You've got no money left, Emily. What's your plan? Emily's voice shook, tears streaming down her face. I'll find a way. Just don't kill him. Jim's muffled groan cut through her, his head lolling as blood dripped onto the concrete. She'd saved him once from a car accident 20 years ago, pulled him from the wreck, held him as he cried. Now here she was again, saving a man who'd shattered her. One thug stepped forward, knife raised. You're in over your head, lady. Emily's hand hovered near the gun, but she didn't draw. She couldn't. Instead, she ripped the recorder from her purse, holding it up. I've got everything. Your voices, Ashley's confession. It's already sent to my lawyer. A lie, but it stopped them cold. Ashley snarled, You're bluffing. Before they could call it, headlights sliced through the darkness outside. Sirens wailed faintly, growing louder. Kate had come through. She'd called the police after Emily's earlier warning. The thugs cursed, bolting for a back exit as Ashley lunged at Jim, untying him. You're on your own, idiot, she hissed, shoving him toward Emily. Jim stumbled, collapsing at her feet, his eyes meeting hers, pleading, broken. Emily, he rasped, blood staining his lips. She knelt beside him, sobbing, her hands hovering over his battered face. Why, Jim? Why? He didn't answer, just gripped her wrist weakly as the warehouse door burst open, police flooding in. Ashley vanished into the night, leaving Emily cradling the man she'd once loved, torn between rage and a grief she couldn't name. The warehouse air was thick with dust and the tang of blood as Emily Carter knelt beside James Jim Thompson, her hands hovering over his battered form. Police lights flashed through the broken windows, casting red and blue streaks across his swollen face. His grip on her wrist weakened, his raspy, Emily, fading into a groan as officers swarmed in, shouting orders. Ashley Brooks had slipped away in the chaos, her leather jacket a blur, vanishing into the night. Emily's tears fell onto Jim's torn shirt, mixing with the crimson stains. She'd saved him, again. But for what? The man who'd stolen her future now lay broken at her feet, and she didn't know whether to hold him or let him go. Paramedics rushed in, prying Jim from her grasp. Ma'am, step back. We've got him, one said, his voice firm but kind. Emily stumbled to her feet, the recorder still clutched in her hand, its red light blinking like a heartbeat. She'd lied about sending it to Kate, but it held everything. Ashley's taunts, the thug's threats, the proof of Jim's descent. An officer approached, notepad in hand. Mrs. Carter? We need a statement. She nodded numbly, her eyes locked on Jim as they loaded him onto a stretcher, his head lolling to one side. He's my husband, she whispered. What? Kate Evans arrived minutes later, her sleek black SUV screeching to a halt outside. She strode in, heels clicking on the concrete, her assistant Mia Lopez trailing with a briefcase. "Emily, thank God you're okay," Kate said, pulling her into a quick, fierce hug. "I called the cops when you didn't check in. What the hell happened?" Emily handed over the recorder, her voice hollow. "It's all there. Ashley, Jim, the loan sharks. They were gonna kill him." Kate's eyes narrowed as she pocketed the device. "This changes everything. We've got leverage now. Criminal charges, not just divorce." The police caught up with Jim and Ashley an hour later, intercepting their rental car on I-94 toward Indiana. Ashley had dragged Jim along, his injuries slowing their escape. Emily sat in a sterile precinct room, watching through a one-way mirror as detectives grilled him. His face was bandaged, one eye swollen shut, but his voice carried through the speaker, weak but defiant. "I didn't mean for it to go this far, Em. The company was tanking. Layoffs, bad investments. I borrowed from those guys to save it, but they wanted more. Ashley, she promised to handle it." "Handle it?" Emily muttered, her hands clenching. Kate stood beside her, arms crossed. "He's admitting to fraud, embezzlement, maybe conspiracy. Keep talking, Jim." The detective leaned in. "And Lily Hayes? Your wife found a letter." Jim's head dropped, his shoulders slumping. "Lily was a mistake. 15 years ago, during a rough patch. Ava's hers, not Emily's. I never told her, couldn't face it." Emily's breath caught, her knees buckling. Kate grabbed her arm, steadying her. "You okay?" Emily shook her head, tears streaming. "I knew, but hearing it..." She couldn't watch anymore. She stumbled out to the precinct lobby, collapsing onto a hard plastic chair. Ava wasn't hers, not by blood. Yet every memory, her first steps, her gap-toothed grin, her college send-off, felt as real as the ache in her chest. She'd lost Jim to Ashley, to Lily, to his own greed. Was she losing Ava too? Her phone buzzed. "Sophia, Mom, we're on our way. Ethan and Ava are with me. Hang on." They arrived at the hospital where Emily had been taken for a checkup. Bruises on her arms from the warehouse scuffle, nothing serious. Sophia burst through the ER doors first, her doctor's coat swapped for a hoodie, her dark eyes scanning until they found Emily. "Mom," she ran over, pulling her into a hug so tight Emily could barely breathe. Ethan followed, his jaw tight, guilt shadowing his face. "I'm sorry, Mom. I was wrong to yell." And then Ava. Her baby stood there, eyes red and puffy, hesitating before throwing herself into Emily's arms. "I don't care what that letter says," Ava sobbed. "You're my mom. I'm so sorry I said I hated you." Emily broke then, clutching Ava as tears soaked her daughter's hair. "You're mine," she choked out. "Always." Sophia joined, her arms around them both, and Ethan stepped in, his hand on Emily's shoulder. The four of them stood there, a tangled knot of grief and love, the hospital's fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Nurses glanced over, some smiling, some teary-eyed. Emily's voice cracked as she whispered, "We're still a family, no matter what he did." Kate interrupted gently, Mia beside her with papers. "Emily, we've got prelims from Matt Clark and Noah Bennett, our forensic accountant and asset guy. They traced $300,000 to Ashley's accounts. The rest, $187,000, is gone, probably cash or offshore. The judge froze everything this morning thanks to your recording. Jim's facing 5 years minimum. Ashley's cutting a deal, less time if she testifies." Emily nodded, exhaustion weighing her down. "And Ava? No one's telling her unless you do," Kate said softly. "That's your call." Emily looked at Ava, now laughing through tears as Ethan teased her about her messy ponytail. She couldn't break that smile. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But later, alone in her hospital room, a nurse handed her a sealed envelope. "This came for you, Mrs. Carter?" Inside was a DNA test, stamped from a lab she didn't recognize. Ava Johnson, no maternal match to Emily Carter. Her hands shook as she tore it into pieces, letting them scatter on the linoleum floor. "You're mine," she repeated, a mantra against the truth. Jim's words haunted her. Lily, the loan sharks, Ava. He'd stolen her money, her trust, maybe even her daughter's origin. But as she watched Sophia, Ethan, and Ava pile into the waiting room chairs, planning to stay the night, she felt a flicker of something new. Hope. They'd lost so much, but they had each other. The cops had Jim, Ashley was cornered, and Emily had fought back. She leaned against the pillow, closing her eyes, the shredded DNA test a silent vow beneath her feet. Outside, Chicago hummed on, oblivious to the family piecing itself back together. But in that quiet room, Emily knew this wasn't the end. Ashley was still out there, and Jim's secrets might not be buried yet. She'd face it tomorrow. For now, she held on to her kids, their voices a lifeline pulling her from the wreckage. Emily Carter stood in the doorway of her new Lake Michigan condo, the late afternoon sun spilling gold across the hardwood floors. Movers shuffled past, grunting as they hauled in the last of her furniture, a sleek gray sofa, a dining table she'd picked out herself. The floor-to-ceiling windows framed the endless blue of the lake, a view that whispered freedom after a year of chaos. She ran her fingers along the smooth marble countertop of her kitchen island. Her kitchen in her home. Bought with the $300,000 she'd clawed back from Jim Thompson's betrayal. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to start over. A year had passed since that night in the warehouse, since she'd knelt in the dust, cradling the man who'd stolen her life savings and walked away with Ashley Brooks. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago, thanks to Catherine Kate Evans and her relentless team. Matt Clark, the forensic accountant, had traced the $300,000 to Ashley's accounts, while Noah Bennett, the asset recovery specialist, ensured it landed back in Emily's hands. The missing $187,000. Gone. Swallowed by cash withdrawals or hidden offshore. A ghost of Jim's desperation. The judge hadn't cared about his excuses. 5 years in prison for fraud and conspiracy. A sentence that felt both too long and too short. Emily leaned against the window, the cool glass soothing her cheek. Ashley had slithered out of the worst of it, cutting a deal for 18 months and vanishing after her release. Last Emily heard, Jim was in Seattle, working some low-level job at 54, his once sharp suits traded for thrift store flannel. She didn't wish him ill, not anymore. The anger had dulled into a quiet ache, a scar she'd learned to live with. She'd lost a husband, but she'd found something else. Herself. Her phone chimed, pulling her from the reverie. A group text from her kids. Sophia, Ethan, and Ava. 3 days till Mom's big day. Can't wait to cheer you on. Emily smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. After decades away from the workforce, she'd gone back to school, finishing her law degree at 53. In 3 days, she'd walk across the stage at Northwestern, the same campus where she'd met Jim all those years ago. Kate had offered her a paralegal job at the firm while she studied, mentoring her through late-night case reviews and bar exam prep. Next month, she'd start as a junior associate in family law, helping women like her reclaim their lives. The movers waved goodbye, leaving her alone with the soft hum of the condo. She unpacked a box labeled photos, pulling out a framed picture of Sophia, Ethan, and Ava at Ava's high school graduation. Sophia was a resident now in Oregon, Ethan an engineer in Colorado, Ava in grad school in Michigan. They'd flown in for the divorce hearings, stood by her through the wreckage of Jim's confession about Lillian Lily Hayes. Ava wasn't hers by blood. Emily had torn up that DNA test in the hospital, but she was hers in every way that mattered. The kids visited often, filling this new space with laughter and takeout pizza, a lifeline she hadn't known she'd needed. But not everything was healed. Ethan had dropped a bombshell last week, his voice tentative over the phone. "I saw Dad in Seattle, Mom. He's different, quiet. He asked about you, wanted to apologize." Emily had frozen, the dish she was washing slipping into the sink with a clatter. "What did you say?" she'd asked. "That it's up to you," Ethan replied. "He knows he messed up." She hadn't responded, just thanked Ethan and hung up. the weight of Jim's name stirring old wounds. Could she forgive him? Should she? The question lingered like lake mist, unresolved. She stepped onto the balcony, the breeze tugging at her hair. The condo was smaller than the Lake Forest house, cozier, hers alone. But it felt right. The settlement had favored her. Jim's financial misconduct tipping the scales and a signing bonus from Kate's firm had sealed the deal. She'd rebuilt brick by brick from the ashes of 27 years. The lake stretched out before her, endless and calm, a mirror to the strength she'd found within. She'd lost a fortune, a marriage, a piece of her past, but she'd gained a future. Her phone buzzed again, a notification from Sophia. Ava's driving in tonight to help you study. Ethan and I land tomorrow. Love you, Mom. Emily's eyes stung, a lump rising in her throat. They'd chosen her over and over, through the DNA revelation, the courtroom battles, the nights she'd cried alone. She typed back, love you too, can't wait, her fingers steady despite the tears. As dusk settled, painting the sky in purples and oranges, Emily unpacked one last item, a small wooden box from her father, the man who taught her resilience. Inside was his old pocket knife, a note in his scrawl, for when you need to cut through the bullshit, M. She laughed softly, tracing the worn handle. She'd done just that. Cut through Jim's lies, Ashley's taunts, her own doubts. The knife went on the mantel, a quiet tribute. But as she turned to close the balcony door, her phone lit up with a new text from an unknown number. You think it's over, Emily? A. Her breath caught, the lake's calm suddenly menacing. Ashley? After all this time? She stared at the screen, the condo's silence pressing in. Her hand drifted to the knife, then stopped. No, she wasn't that woman anymore. She blocked the number, her jaw set, and stepped back inside, locking the door with a firm click. 3 days later, she'd graduate, her kids cheering from the crowd. She'd start her job, build her life, face whatever came next, Ashley, Jim, or the ghosts of Lily. For now, she stood at the window, watching the lake ripple under the fading light. I lost a husband, she whispered, but I found me. The words hung in the air, a promise to herself, as the horizon stretched wide with possibility and a shadow of uncertainty she was ready to meet.